Well, and this concept, by the way, that I just described is what's called world Jewry. This is something that Henry Ford and Adolf Hitler talked about quite a bit. Henry Ford started with it with a book called The International Jew, and then obviously Hitler followed up on it with Mein Kampf. And obviously a lot of people are going to say these are anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and tropes. Well, how is it that this is happening 100 years later? How is it that someone like a Candace Owens gets banned from Australia because of her anti-Semitic rhetoric when Australia is like maybe 1 or 2% Jewish? How is it that we got students getting deported from the United States because of speech that criticizes Israel? They can burn an American flag, no problem, but then they burn an Israeli flag, they're getting deported. It was so bad that Donald Trump had to put in an executive order where if you burn the American flag, now you're going to get in trouble as well. But it was because people were calling him out like, hey, you're saying that someone can be critical of Israel and lose their visa, but if they say something about America, it's fine. It was like, oh shit, that was sorry about that. And you write this executive order. But the reality is it was all these anti-Semitism laws have been put in place for Israel. The reason why we can talk about this now is because of what happened on October 7th. For those who are unaware, basically what happened was a bunch of Hamas resistance fighters broke into Israel. There was a lot of people that were killed. Somewhere around 1,200 people were killed, and 200 plus individuals were brought back into the Gaza Strip as hostages. That's the overall story, summarized. What's also important is that when this event occurred, the Israeli government and the mainstream media ran with a bunch of atrocity propaganda lies. 40 beheaded babies, babies in ovens, mass rapes, all these horrible things. And it got so bad that Hamas knew that they were going to level Gaza because they were manufacturing this atrocity to basically justify not just a conflict to destroy Gaza, but to also do an ethnic cleansing. And in mainstream media, no one ever talks about this, but Hamas did put a deal on the table on or about October 10th of 2023, days after the attack, to give all the hostages back in exchange for them not invading Gaza. Now I know someone might be watching this and saying, well, Myron, they committed the worst terrorist attack in Israeli history. Why the hell should they have not bombed the hell out of them? Well, it's because of what's going on right now. Because what ensued was not only did the Israeli government deny that deal, they went in and systematically bombed the fuck out of Gaza, but they overplayed their hand. They ran in with the lies of babies in ovens and mass rapes. And upon investigation, all of these things were thoroughly debunked. And not only were they thoroughly debunked, we have Twitter. Thanks to Elon Musk purchasing Twitter, people were able to go on their timeline and see babies getting blown up. They were able to see real beheaded babies that are Palestinian, that have nothing to do with this conflict, getting absolutely demolished. They're watching people burning in real time on fire in Rafah. For the first time, Americans were able to see what's been going on in the Middle East for several decades. Because for the longest time, our government has told us that these terrorists hate us because of our freedoms. What they don't tell us is they really hate us because we take away their freedoms. And this is what Osama bin Laden talked about in explicit detail in a letter to America back in like 2002, 2003. And I want to make sure I get this timeline so your audience understands this and how we got what I call the Great Awakening now, or the Great Noticing as some may call it. So October 7th happens. Israel ends with the lies, beheaded babies, mass rapes, etc. Joe Biden spreads this. Western leaders spread this. Everyone gives the green light to Israel. Yes, Jordan Peterson famously, give him hell Netanyahu, enough is enough, blah, blah, blah. They wage a crazy campaign and start blowing up the fuck out of Gaza. Videos coming out on TikTok, on Twitter, etc., showing all these innocent people suffering. This led the young people who weren't indoctrinated by the war on terror, like I was, to ask questions. In the course of asking questions, a letter to America written by Osama bin Laden goes viral in November of 2023. In this letter, Osama bin Laden articulates all of his grievances with the West, whether it was the death of Iraqi children, terrible sanctions, to killing Palestinians, to destroying the Middle East, destabilizing the Middle East. The bottom line almost always was our support of Israel and how our government is controlled by Israel. I didn't see this letter back when I was young because the mainstream media controlled everything. And they did not put that letter out for a reason saying, well, we don't know if it's going to activate sleeper cells in America. We're not going to put it out. Fast forward 20 plus years later, it comes out. And not only does it comes out to an audience of people that weren't indoctrinated by the Bush eras of propaganda of wars. So they're able to look at it with a fresh set of eyes. And they're like, oh, no wonder they hate us. This guy's lining out like a whole thesis on why they're waging war on the United States. It went so fucking viral that they had to take it down and ban it again because people started talking about it on TikTok. And TikTok, one of the good things about it, besides the stupid censorship for conservatives, is things go viral, they go viral. And it's very difficult for them to put out that fire. It went so viral that people got red pilled on what the fuck was going on. The next thing you know, they start researching this Palestine-Israel conflict. They look at the partition plan in 1947. They look at the Peel Commission in 1937 and the Peel Commission in 1937, partition plan in 1947. Then they look at the 1967 war. Then they look at Yom Kippur. Then they look at the occupation. Then they look at the fact that they occupy the Golan Heights and the West Bank illegally. Then they look at how Gaza they had to pull out in 2005. And as people do their history, they start to realize, wait, hold on one second. You've been oppressing these people for decades and you're mad that they're resisting? What the fuck is going on here? You're living in an apartheid ethno state where these people have no rights and they're being held down by a group of people. What's even worse is, oh, we pay for this. Before October 7th, most Americans didn't even know what the word Zionism was. Most Americans couldn't even point out where Gaza was on a fucking map. But after October 7th happened, TikTok blew this topic up, etc. People got red pilled on this very quickly. And the people that got red pilled were the young people that weren't as indoctrinated or retarded like the boomer audience and people from my generation, because we always grew up thinking Osama was the worst guy ever. They hate us for our freedoms, all this other stuff. But then we figured out that the war on terror was a lie. Obviously, it took me 10 plus 20 years to figure this out, but that's what happened. It got so bad that Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL and multiple other Jewish groups, pro-Zionist groups, said, we need to deal with fucking TikTok. We need to deal with this because at the time it was about 70% pro-Palestine versus about 30% pro-Israel. And it was one of the few social media platforms that the Zionist lobby didn't have control of. So what do they say? We need to ban this thing. Now, to put things into context for you of how much influence they have, this is not the first time they talked about banning TikTok. Back in August of 2020, there was discussion about banning TikTok because it was Chinese spyware. It came to, the bill was brought to the floor. Trump said he was going to do it. They never did it. Fast forward to 2023, 2024, the Zionist lobby talks about it being a problem. Now they're actually going to fucking do it. And I want this to really stick with your audience. When it came to national security for the United States of America against one of our biggest adversaries, China, they kicked the can down the road. When it came to the Jews figuring out that people are waking up to their fucking crimes, they got it banned. And that should tell you right then and there that Israel's national security overrides our own. Not only did they get it banned, they got it banned for 24 hours. It comes back. Trump fought to keep it up because TikTok was instrumental to his 2024 campaign. He gets it back. And a lot of Americans obviously rely on it for income and all this other shit. So it comes back for a day. But when it comes back, you can't say free Palestine. You can't put in watermelon emojis. You can't say from the river to the sea, all this stuff. That wasn't good enough. So then what happens? They buy it. Larry Ellison buys it. Who's Larry Ellison? A billionaire tech guy who is one of the biggest donors to the IDF. Oh yeah, and by the way, he's Jewish. They procure TikTok, and Trump basically had kept TikTok kind of like alive in America, pending an American company buying it. But it's not that they bought it because of Chinese spyware. They bought it to control the narrative and reel in some of this anti-Israel stuff. And just to bring things full perspective, this was such a problem to them. Jonathan Greenblatt went to like the fucking Knesset, which is like the equivalent to like the Israeli, think of like the Senate combined in one for them. He went over there and talked to the Israeli government saying, yo, we got a TikTok problem. We have an anti-Semitism problem, but it's not by platform, it's by age, it's by demographic. And he was figuring out that the youth do not support Israel. Why is this a problem? Because Israel only exists and is protected by the United States. If the young people do not believe in the Zionist mission and aren't indoctrinated to protect Israel, these people are eventually going to become politicians, legislators, people with influence. And if they don't support Israel, it's not going to be long until Israel won't exist anymore because they're surrounded by their enemies. So they understood that this is a big problem that they need to get ahead of. That is why Larry Ellison purchased it. That is why one of the main moderators for TikTok now is a former IDF Unit 8200 individual, which think of that as like their functional equivalent of NSA, right? They do a lot of signals intelligence, etc. Unit 8200 within IDF. Then you look at Facebook, Jordana Cutler. She's also a Jew, used to work under Netanyahu, and she's the head of Israeli/Palestinian type content, and it's been overwhelmingly censored on Facebook now too. When I say that they have control in every major infrastructural point, who runs Instagram? Adam Asari, Jew. Who runs Facebook/Meta? Mark Zuckerberg, Jew. Who runs the trust and safety for that? Jordana Cutler, Jew. Who runs TikTok now? Larry Ellison, Jew. Who ran YouTube for years? Susan Wojcicki, Jew. At this point, it's like, what the hell is going on? Who runs Google? Who founded Google? Sergey Brin, Jew. Now, some people might say, oh, Myron, you're just conspiracy theorist, blah, blah, blah. Is it really a coincidence or is it a fucking coincidence? I think it's a coincidence because all these fucking Jews have power, these different infrastructure points that are vitally important. Big tech, government, lobbies. We can see that they are using their influence to their benefit. And now, if you get on TikTok, you can't even talk about AIPAC. What's happened is October 7th happened. People saw all these kids dying. They got red pill on what's going on. They figured out the history. Anyone with a heart realizes this is a fucking genocide and Israel's in the wrong and it's an illegal occupation. The youth are siding with Palestine. Israel doesn't hold the narrative anymore because mainstream media doesn't have the same level of tentacle power that it used to have, like in my generation, and they're panicking. This is why Benjamin Netanyahu now is starting to do more interviews. This is why they got a bunch of influencers that are out here getting paid $7,000 per post to post pro-Israel propaganda.